Right, so thanks for tuning in. Just bear with me a second. If you didn't catch me in the main session, I'm Stuart Connop. I'm from the University of East London, and I am the facilitator for this Innovation Cafe session. This is the first one I've facilitated on, and it is a slightly new platform for me. So if I do have any glitches, just bear with me, and I'll get to the bottom of it. But hopefully it'll run smoothly. I'll just start with a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Just to let you all know, this session is being filmed and recorded. So just keep that in mind. These innovation cafes are designed to be very informal sessions with lots of opportunity to chat. So please don't be shy. Feel free to get involved after Emilie's does her presentation to start. For the session, we'll begin with Emilie's presentation, followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions. And from the sounds of it, Emilie's going to be asking you questions as well. And to have an informal chat, so a little less formal than the main sessions. Unlike the main session, your microphones can be turned on and off by yourselves. So could I please ask all attendees to keep themselves muted when you're not speaking, just by making sure the microphone symbol at the bottom is clicked off, so we don't get any unexpected noises or feedback loops. For the Q&A and the discussion after the presentation, Emilie, it sounds like Emilie's going to lead this, but if you do have questions and you do want to chat with Emilie, then we encourage you to turn your cameras and microphones on. It's a bit disconcerting talking into blank cyberspace, so we'd like to get people as engaged as possible. The maximum number of cameras I can have turned on at any one time is 9. So I'll have to switch people in and out to get you kind of chatting, but hopefully I'll be able to do that, and that'll be fairly straightforward. If you do want to get involved and get on screen and talk to Emilie, then please do raise your hand to ask a question, and I'll have a little moderator panel at the bottom of my screen, and I can let you in to talk directly and be on screen. If you're more shy, you can put notes in the chat. I'll be trying to monitor that, and if you have questions, particular questions, do pop them in the chat. And lastly, I apologize in advance, but I have been told that I have to be very punctual as the next session starts straight after this one. So if I do have to abruptly cut the conversation off, I do apologize in advance. But yeah, I've been warned. Right, so now on to the real business. This is part of the Reducing Risk Innovation Cafe. We're fortunate enough to be joined by Emilie Wadsworth, who is a strategy and development manager with the Green Action Trust. She's an ecologist by background and is the driving force behind the 10,000 Raingardens for Scotland programme, which she's going to be presenting for all of us today. So over to you, Emilie.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I'll just share my screen. Yes, as Stuart said, I intend on giving you a whistle-stop tour of the 10,000 Raingardens for programme, and particularly focusing on the plans that we have for the next 12 to 18 months, and hopefully that will foster some discussion, and I'll be able to get your thoughts and comments on that particular phase. I'm hoping that some of you will be a step or two further along from where we are and be able to give me some insight and some advice, and also just general comments as well. So thank you. Yes, I'm Emilie Wadsworth. I'm the Strategy and Development Manager with the Green Action Trust, and the 10,000 Raingardens for Scotland is a programme that I've been involved in pretty much since its inception, which is back in 2014. We worked closely with an informal group of people called the Scottish Green Infrastructure Forum, and they came up with this idea following a conference in Glasgow that we had Tony Barrett from Melbourne Water came along and talked about their 10,000 Raingardens for Melbourne project, which focused on water saving for periods of drought. but that had been taken forward by places in North America, Portland in particular, for combating flood, particularly stormwater events. And we thought, well, it rains quite a lot in Scotland. Perhaps we could look at doing something like that here. So for the first 5 years, we undertook promotional activities. We got a website up and running, produced a whole load of information, tried to encourage local authorities, Scottish Government and other organisations to take rain gardens seriously and take them forward as a genuine contribution to water management, particularly floodwater management. The definition that we decided to stick with is the one on the screen here, which is a rain garden is a vegetated area designed to use, slow down and hold back rainfall. We thought that's the vegetated bit is quite important because that just adds an extra layer of multifunctionality to a rain garden. We also incorporate anything from green roofs and green walls, which are often seen as additional green infrastructure features, but also some of the things that perhaps come to mind when you think about a rain garden, such as a swale, suds basin, planter boxes and things like that. In the last couple of years, we've managed to trial a Glasgow pilot project, which allowed us to undertake some work with a housing association in Glasgow and work with the community there on community co-design rain gardens within a very urban landscape. And we learned a lot about some of the barriers that are being that we have in Scotland, particularly to the more standard use of rain gardens. And we also managed to learn quite a lot of positive things from that project as well. And it's left us pretty much where we are and where I want to take you to in a slide or two. So some of the regularly cited benefits of rain gardens, as I'm sure most of you are aware, are the flood mitigation and the contribution to urban drainage, and in some places natural flood management as well. They also can help towards air quality and water quality, pollution reduction. They can also bring biodiversity into our cities, create green networks, as well as having an attractive look about them, provide amenity and recreational value, the associated health and well-being that goes along with that. However, we were finding over the last, well, since 2014, that, and I don't know whether it's just Scotland or whether this has happened elsewhere, but we get a lot of, well, that won't work here. And that's fine for places like Sweden. That's Scandinavia. It always works there. It won't work in Scotland. And we realised that that's an attitude that we struggle to get over without having quantified, demonstrable facts and figures about the genuine contribution rain gardens can make to a suite of these multiple benefits. And that's where we're now. We have the opportunity to gather some proper monitoring data on a lot of those features, but also some others. That in recently installed rain gardens, there's probably about half a dozen on various scales that we have access to, that we're already gathering data around rainfall, water management, biodiversity, but also the opinions of local communities and local people. And we have several sites across the central belt of Scotland that are at the design stage where we could actually get in early and we can build in really robust before, during and after monitoring to start putting together what we're terming a business case for policymakers and practitioners that demonstrate the actual value that rain gardens can give to a whole range of economic and social and environmental benefits. And this is where I really want to start to bring you in. So we're at the very early stages of this. In fact, the funding is only about 99% secure. I haven't quite got that ink signature on the paper yet, but it looks like that we're going to be able to spend the next 12 to 18 months with staff in place to produce a really robust logic model and monitoring and evaluation framework that will allow us to gather the data needed to build the business case, but also to perhaps start looking at a design manual or specifications and guidance on rain gardens in different situations, what can be done, what cost they potentially have, and importantly, management and maintenance Maintenance is something that came up a lot this morning and always comes up, is that it's fine spending X amount of pounds on a capital rain garden project, but who looks after it? Because if it's not looked after, then it very quickly ceases to work. So we have the existing rain gardens that have recently been installed, plus these 5 neighbourhood level schemes, which cover whole streets and whole estates, housing estates. Sorry, I'm getting a bit lost in my words there. But these neighbourhood level schemes, which will allow us to test the framework that we're putting together, and gather the initial data, but also produce these bespoke management and maintenance plans for different types of rain garden features. We want to make sure that we cover environmental, social and economic factors, so we can sell this not just to the climate change staff in local authorities, but also perhaps to investors that might want to contribute towards the delivery of this kind of thing. Also to businesses to help them understand that rain gardens and neighbourhood schemes of that scale can improve business perception and also encourage people to stay within a local area. As I said, this is at very early stages, and this is the list of factors that we want to monitor that we have so far. We know it is probably only a fraction of the things that we could start to look at, and we will need support from professionals that know what kind of data is out there already to help us build a decent baseline. Basically, what I'm wanting to spend the next, I don't know, I think we've got about 12, 13 minutes, is to ask you about your experience of this kind of work, and if there are particular factors that we should be trying to monitor. What are we missing, as I've put down there, but also your experience about doing similar things wherever you are in the world. We're aware that we're quite far behind in parts of Scotland in mainstreaming some of this work, so any advice or thoughts or comments you have would be very gratefully received. And as tradition, I have to finish with the last slide saying who we are and what we are. But these are the contact details for the 10,000 Rain Gardens project at the top. So if we get cut off today, please do feel free to get in touch with me individually. And I will stop sharing now and see if we've got any comments or thoughts.
Thanks for that, Emilie. Really interesting, and especially from my point of view, because I wear 2 hats, I suppose. One is in connecting nature, which is around kind of technical solutions, but also evaluating nature-based solutions and building this kind of evidence base around them. Another hat that I wear is around SUDS, which is possibly why they picked me to facilitate your session. So I've done a fair bit of work monitoring SUDS, various SUDS projects in London. And I'm currently at the very beginnings of a project which is going to explore this idea of kind of barriers, what existing barriers are there to roll out. And I've just done a book chapter actually, which is coming out quite soon, which is all around stewardship. And you say Glasgow is possibly not as advanced as some other people, but one of the case studies in my chapter was about this idea in Glasgow, where there's a collaboration between the local authority and the local water company to adopt SUDS after they've been implemented to manage them. And from my perspective, that kind of long-term management is quite often the biggest barrier. That it's easier to get the funding to implement, to design and implement, but it's that long-term management that tends to be a challenge. So
completely agree there. Capital funding is relatively easy to get. I mean, it's not easy, but there are funding pots out there, and a lot of the way you've just touched on some of the projects in Glasgow. I popped into James Murray's session just before this one. He was talking about the Halfway Community Park, the Queensland Cotton Gardens. They're both properties of Southside Housing Association. One of the other ones I had in my presentation. They've got money from the Nature Scot Green Infrastructure Fund to deliver the capital works. They couldn't have done that without that funding. But it's the maintenance going forward. They're having to commit quite a bit of staff time into maintaining it, which housing associations can do to a certain degree because they have to maintain the properties anyway. But it's finding other sources, other mechanisms of keeping on top of things. I think that's pretty much what Wendy and a few people there is the permanent maintenance. They just look rubbish after a while and stop to work, and then people think, what's the point?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm happy to kind of open things up to get direct feedback to you, but we do have a few questions first based on what you said. I don't know whether you'd like to. You're happy to take those first, and then maybe open it up more generally. Would that be okay?
That'd be fine. Yes.
Is anyone brave enough to come on screen and get involved in the chat? I know we've got questions from Nadine, Rob Playford, and Wendy Campbell. Does anyone brave enough to come on and ask their question and get involved in the chat? If not, I can.
I have a pen and I'm ready to take notes.
I believe so. I can ask them for you, but I think if I'm correct, at the top right-hand corner of your screen, there's a thing you can click to join us on screen. Okay. No, so it seems either people are shy or technology is beating us at the moment.
I think
Laura.
just replying to Wendy. Wendy, I think there should be a blue button at the top right-hand side that says "Ask to share screen and video" or "Sound and video." It was there when I was in James's session earlier, so hopefully that's what you need to press.
Wendy, yeah, Wendy and Laura. I'll let you both in. There you go.
Hi, Laura. I know Laura, by the way. I think she's got a nice question for me.
So Wendy put one in the chat. So maybe we'll go Wendy first, and then over to Laura.
Yeah, it was I suppose less of a question and more of a discussion, Emily. We're involved in some early work on Raingardens as well, and it was just to get your experience on the sort of long-term maintenance and whether you see it. I suppose at the minute I see it. I work a lot in blue-green infrastructure, and I see it heavily tied in with the sort of green financing and maybe getting private investment support for community and getting more community involvement in sort of long-term maintenance of Raingardens in their place. So a lot of sort of comms work and interpretation and sort of, but I think there does have to be a backstop if that goes downhill, because I know there can be a lot of, you can have interested individuals and then they leave the area or that sort of thing. So it was just any thoughts you had around that sort of general.
It's as everyone has said, it's the biggest issue actually is the maintenance, and I think I completely agree in that getting private investment is at the moment something that's really worth investigating. I'm trying to make contacts with various people. Are you Wendy Campbell with SEPA?
Yes.
Sorry,
we've had a cyber attack for 3 months. We're only back online. No,
that's okay, because I've been speaking to one of your colleagues before Christmas about that, but that's obviously all on hold. The Raingardens that we've been involved in so far, and the 5 that we've sort of tentatively got identified for going forward, have got, I suppose there are 3 main maintenance mechanisms with them. Firstly is that they're suds basins, or they're involved in a suds system somehow, in which case the Scottish Water or the local authority are taking forward that management and maintenance. The third one is as part of a housing association. So the ones at Southside that I mentioned, the housing association have committed to long-term permanent maintenance as part of their landscape maintenance. So those are sort of relatively straightforward, hopefully permanent issues. But as we always know, a lot of people are strapped for cash at the moment, and maintenance of green spaces is often the first thing that goes.
Yeah.
But the third option that we've been looking at, which is where we're probably going, we haven't tried yet, but that's the next stage, is the idea of community involvement. And the Raingardens that we're wanting to deliver in the next couple of years they're at the concept design stage at the moment, and that they will be developed further through really intense community co-design, getting the buy-in from the people who actually live there at the moment, and working with them to come up with the maintenance mechanism and the skills and training that can be associated with that. We've also got to recognise that often a community group like that is dependent on one person or two people, and if they were to leave or give up, then it's very easy for that just to fail. Sorry, I have my cameras. There you go. Started making some strange noises. So that and that's I suppose that's the bit at the moment where it's that backstop. We haven't bottomed that out as yet, but we're aware that it's there and we need to.
That's really interesting. There's a lot of parallels with our own work. So yeah, I'm sure I'll be in contact.
Please do.
Thanks, Wendy. Laura?
Hi. It's just a couple of things, if that's okay. One that a few people have touched upon in the comments about specifications for rain gardens. You know, it's a relatively new technique. Getting contractors in place actually can do this properly in a way that functions really well. Perhaps a design that would take account of maintenance and reduce the maintenance requirement as well. Is that something that your work will look to produce?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people are often citing the Syria SUD guidance to me, saying, "Can we have one of those for rain gardens?" And wouldn't that be wonderful? I don't know whether I could write that myself, but we certainly hope to get to that kind of standards or standard specifications for different rain gardens that are suitable for different situations. They won't all be off the peg because there will always be differences, you know, depending whether you're rural or urban or what kind of landscape you've got, but certainly some kind of decent suite of specs that people can take off the shelf. The issue of contractors is a really interesting one because I've spoken to some contractors who basically say, I don't care whether it's called a rain garden or not, actually the designs you give me, I can build regardless of what you call it. And there are other ones that say, I have no idea what you mean. And as you say, often just overthink it and perhaps make a bit more of a meal out of what they're actually doing. But there's definitely an education thing to be done there. And ultimately, I'd like to have a professional training program which addresses architects, landscape architects, civil engineers, and support the actual design, but also the contractor sort of training, that they feel more confident with what they're doing. Does that answer?
That's great. That's great. I just had one more thing, if that's okay. It was just to kind of flag up the value of working with local biodiversity partnerships to make the most of green networks and local priority species when putting rain gardens into place. So to have that information on local species and linking up with other areas of habitat to make the most of rain gardens. And I think Emilie knows that that's something that we're keen to progress and make the most of in North Lanarkshire.
Absolutely. I mean, getting the balance right between native species and species that will actually thrive. There's a lot of crossover. It's very easy to make sure that you're providing the right plants and the right habitats for the right species with a little bit of attention. And yeah, you know that I'll be on board with that. And also, if part of what we're trying to do is create more of a green network through urban areas, there's no point putting inappropriate habitats or inappropriate species in, or that connectivity won't work. It'll still remain fragmented.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. We're running out of time very rapidly. There was a question in the chat I promised I'd get across on the subject of biodiversity, and it's this idea of disservice. So there's a question about kind of bugs and mosquitoes associated with it. Is it a barrier that you've come across and something that you're trying to address?
Do you know, oddly enough, the mosquito question I haven't had about rain gardens as yet. I have had it alongside the rain gardens, I'm also the ecologist and biodiversity officer for the Green Action Trust, and we do a lot of habitat creation projects. And whenever we're creating a wetland, the mosquito question comes up. But in terms of rain gardens, it generally doesn't. And that's because in this country, a rain garden is predominantly dry, and it's there only to take water when there's a major storm event or there's some kind of flooding overflow, so that it's actually dry for about 80–90% of the time. Therefore, it doesn't provide the right environment for mosquitoes and other waterborne pests to come to adulthood and become a problem. So at the moment, Scotland doesn't have the right environment for that to be a big issue. It might change.
Karina, I'm really sorry. I just realised it's turned to 2:50, and I've been told I have to be very punctual. There's two things. One, I believe Emilie is involved in a booth here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Karina?
Yes.
So maybe you could go to the booth and ask your question. Otherwise, maybe put your question in the event chat, and maybe possibly Emilie could have a quick look.
Yes, I will do, because there are things I can point you to some links for exactly those questions. So yes,
Okay.
either find me in a booth or drop me an email or in the chat, and I can send you the links to that.
Okay.
No worries. Thank you.
Apologies. It's been a real whistle stop. That time just absolutely flew by. But thanks all for joining. Apologies, Emilie, if you didn't get as much information out of us as we got out of you. But it was very interesting, and please do kind of touch base anyone if you think you might be able to help Emilie develop her monitoring plan.
Yeah. I'm not going to leave just yet because I've seen there's a few comments in the chat. So so Sarah Jane Foster and a few people, I'm going to take those comments down, and I will find you in the chat or in the networking session or something, and can talk to you about those comments.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emilie, and thanks all. I believe I have to close it now, or I get in trouble.
All right then. Thank you very much.
Bye.